On March 16, 2020, Chevron fell to a low price of around $60 per share, mainly due to a combination of COVID as well as just oil demands being very, very low. In fact, crude oil went to as low as $10 per barrel. And unfortunately for me, I did not see this opportunity. Chevron was falling and all the companies were falling, not because of their own fault, but because of the macroeconomic environment, things that weren't really up to their own power to control. And because of that, I actually had a lot of friends telling me, hey, you should probably buy it around this point, around the $60 mark. However, I did not do that. I was very, very afraid. However, I did manage to buy it later at around like the $90 to around like the $100 price tag or so. And to date, Chevron is my best holding so far, with 123 shares that I currently own, with a gain of $9,230. That is up, guys, 73.8% since I originally bought it, which is just mind-boggling. Now, we recently had a revelation in another industry, in another market, where we've had something similar happen to another company. And because I am just so terrified of missing out on this opportunity, just like I did with Chevron again a second time with this other company, I decided to do a major deep dive, take a look at this company's 10Q, and just do a ton of research to finally give my final opinion on whether or not I'm personally going to buy this company. Because if this does end up being a Chevron style situation, well, this will probably be one of another bangers when it comes into my portfolio. And if you saw that thumbnail, that company is none other than Intel. Guys, Intel has just been completely getting destroyed within these past couple months. I mean, it's just been awful. Ever since they put out their Q3 earnings report, it's just been down ever since. And in fact, as of today, I'm recording this actually on the 28th at around 11:18 a.m. So market is open. Intel is down another 1% to $25.68. So the fact of the matter is that if this does end up being a Chevron situation where this company is getting hit because of macroeconomic situations, not necessarily their own fault, well, this might actually be a banger of a company. So what I did, guys, is I've read majority of their 10Q, looked at their revenues, did a discounted free cash flow approach with a new assessment onto their future revenues as well as future projected share buyback, and even their newer kind of products that they just released as well, to see if I could come up with a scenario where Intel might actually be very profitable and hopefully their share price goes up in the future. Because seeing that I do own 35 shares, I'm currently down $783 on this company, if this does end up being a Chevron style situation, this will serve as a really good opportunity to buy at the current moment. So with that said, guys, let's get started with this video. From this point onward, I am no longer going to make any more edits. So this video is going to be probably very, very long. So excuse me for that, but I kind of want this just to be as raw as possible, just so that way you guys can have the entire assessment when it comes to their 10Q. So with that said, let's get started with this video. Alright, so now we're here at the Intel Corporation Form 10Q quarterly report. Pretty much highlighted, guys, a couple of the points I wanted to show you, all of you. Also, I will have this link if you want it in the description below, just in case if you guys want to read the entire thing. I will go very much in depth into this, but I'm not going to go over all of it. But let's actually come down here to a couple of the highlighted points that I made. In fact, we're here at the quarter in review. So we got the total revenue of $15.3 billion, was down $3.9 billion year over year, or 20%. As CCG revenue decreased, by the way, we're going to go through what all of these mean. CCG, we got DCAI and NEX. We're going to go through all of these later on this video as we go further into this 10Q. But the CCG revenue decreased 17%. DCAI revenue decreased 27%. Next revenue increased 14%. Q3 2022 results were impacted by an uncertain macroeconomic environment that continues to deteriorate with slowing consumer demands, persistent inflation, and higher interest rates that we believe impacts our target markets and create high level of uncertainty with our customers. Okay, so right then and there, we're seeing that they're saying, okay, our issue with this is because of uncertain macroeconomics. So by what it looks like, right, by what it's seeming like to be, this is not necessarily their fault, right? This is similar to like the Chevron situation where oil just crashed, the crude oil just crashed. So, and then add on top of that the fact that COVID was going on, Chevron fell. And by the looks of it, we're kind of seeing something similar here. Obviously different kind of circumstances, but similar overall circumstances, if that makes any sense, right? So the fact of the matter is that yes, they were down $3.9 billion, essentially $4 billion year over year, 20%. CCG revenue, this is one segment of their revenue, fell 17%. DCI revenue decreased 27%, and next revenue increased 14%. But all of them were caused, according to them, all of them were caused by macroeconomic environment. So that's interesting to note. Now we do have some key developments over here. This is pretty much like the summary of the entirety of the 10Q. So we got here, we began high volume manufacturing in Sapphire Rapids, Raptor Lake, and Ponte Vecchio expect to begin shipping to customers in Q4 2022. So okay, they began to manufacture in these areas, awesome, and they'll begin shipping to customers in Q4, which is what we're in right now. So we're going to see this effects on shipping in Q1 of next year when we get Q4 numbers, right? It's going to be very, very interesting. And here we also have something very interesting as well. I was not aware of these new things that they actually did. For starters, we introduced the Intel Data Center GPU Flex Series for Intelligence Visual Cloud, which provides a GPU solution built to flexibly handle the wide range of workloads. I did not realize that they were actually in the GPU space. And I looked this up, and I asked also a couple of my friends as well. They were like, oh yeah, like they made like their Arc 770 GPU, which was like the first one that they did. And it was a really good, I guess, starting point. But when I saw this, I'm like, okay, let me do more research on this. So one of them actually gave me this website where he pretty much just summarizes all of like their architecture and spec, performance analysis. And I went down to the verdict to see what this person that wrote this article said about this GPU. It said, for what I had at one time expected to be a pretty brutal graphics card launch, Intel has brought Alchemist back from the brinks and turned it into something. Something is better than nothing, and the Intel Arc A770 is absolutely one better than that. If there was more stability across frame rates, I don't think I'd have qualms in calling Intel's first generation GPUs a qualified success. But as it stands today, it's much tougher to make any sort of sweeping statement. So it was good. So, well, for starters, it actually wasn't a good launch, right? Brutal graphics card launch. So that was a pretty bad launch. But after people tried it out, it was kind of like, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't like NVIDIA graphic card standards, right? It was more like, okay, it's good. It's good for the first shot. In fact, if we actually come all the way up here when it comes to this one, we could see a couple of the pros and cons when it comes to this A770 GPU. So we got excellent DX12 and Vulkan performance. By the way, guys, I know nothing about GPUs. I know a little bit, right? I know like the very basics of it. But when it comes to like these kinds of lexicons, I'm not really certain about. So if you guys know, please let me know in the comment section below. But we got excellent DX12 and Vulkan performance, impressive ray tracing acceleration, 16 gigabytes of GDDR6, well-made and good-looking cooler shroud, affordable, a good option to have in the entry level. Against, doesn't run as well as DX11 and older APIs. Resize bar is essential. AMD RDNA 2 price drops are tough to beat. So that right there, I mean, when it said affordable, but yet at the same time, the AMD RDNA 2 price drops are tough to beat, that might be a little bit of an issue. Best at 4K, but not quite a genuinely 4K capable card, and high power draw. So it wasn't bad, but it also wasn't like amazing, right? So that is something interesting that we definitely have to keep in mind when reading this statement over here. Something else that I didn't realize that they released as well was we also announced a 12th generation Intel Core, which was interesting. And on top of that, they also revealed the 13th generation Intel Core processor family with 6 new unlocked desktop processors with 24 cores and 32 threads and clock speeds up to 5.8 gigahertz for leading gaming, streaming, and recording experiences. So you can see that they are at least making new things, right? They're making better products overall, at least from what I'm reading on this, right? Obviously, they do have competitors in the form of AMD as well as NVIDIA, but nonetheless, they are still going on with innovation. So let's actually come down here further when it comes to other parts that I want to show you guys. And right here, so right here we got the operating segments, and we did see this in the first part of this article, but this essentially shows exactly where they're getting their income from, right? Where they're getting the revenue from. So they actually have a couple businesses in how they split up these kinds of segments. So we got client computing, CCG, data center and AI, DCAI, network and edge, next. Now these were the three that we saw up there, and what we actually see down here that those three are our reportable operating segments. AXG, Mobileye, and IFS do not meet the quantitative threshold to qualify for reportable operating segments. So mainly their big chunk of their income is coming from essentially these three. They also have, again, as they just said, accelerated computing systems and graphics, AXG, which is, I'm assuming, where they made their GPU, like that segment, that's where their GPU was made. And obviously, since this is the first one, it's not surprising that this isn't meeting the quantitative thresholds for reporting, right? We got Mobileye and we got Intel Foundry Services. I believe the Intel Foundry Services is where their chips are made, and Mobileye, from what I read, it's actually, that has to do with like 5G stuff. So the fact of the matter is that their main three cores are from CCG, DCIA, and NEX, and their essentially satellite cores are, well, I guess not cores, and their satellite, I guess, revenue sources are from AXG, Mobileye, and IFS. So let's actually come down here because they actually split this up into each individual segment, like where they where they're bringing in their revenue. So we got here the desktop. We got on the 3 months, guys. Take a look at this. September 25th, 2021, the desktop. Basically, this is the client computing, the CCG. We got desktop, notebook, and other. So when it came to the desktop in 2021, they made $3.12 billion, and in the same time frame this year, they did $3.22 billion. However, on the 9-month ended, you can see that this significantly dropped, going from $8.7 billion to $8.2 billion. In the notebook, we got 5.9 for the 3-month ended in 2021 to 4.4 billion in October 1st, 2022. So unlike the desktop, where it actually went up by like $100 million, the notebook actually came down by like, well, actually a significant amount, almost like $1.8 billion, right, or so. So that's kind of concerning, and that was on the 3-month ended. If you see on 9-month ended for the notebook, you could see that it went down a whole lot from 19.6 billion to $15 billion. In the data center, AI, we went from $5.78 billion, this is in the 3-month ended 2021, to $4.21 billion in the 3-month ended of October 1st, 2022. So that was a big drop as well. And when they came to the 9-month ended, they went from 16.3 billion 2021 to essentially 14.9 billion in 2022. And network and edge, they actually went up. They went from like around 2 billion to 2.27 billion in 3 months, 2021 to 2022. And for the 9-month ended, they also went up from 5.89 billion in 2021 to 6.8 billion in 2022. And we also got here the accelerated computer graphics. I kind of just highlighted this one by mistake, but you can see that this one also went up, but you can clearly see that like the accelerated computing graphics, Mobileye, and Intel Foundry services, they're in the millions of dollars, sorry, in the hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's still, you know, it really doesn't compare to like these top three that we got over here. However, though, the Mobileye actually did fairly decent on the 9-month ended, going from $1 billion to $1.3 billion in the same time frame, right? That's pretty cool in my personal opinion. At least that's actually really, really good. So let's actually come down here further to see what other part I highlighted. So here we got something I also noticed, and I know this is further down. However, I'm like, ooh, I need to see where this actually is, because this is important as well. We got the NAND memory business. In October 2020, we assigned an agreement with SK Hynix Inc. To divest our NAND memory business for $9 billion in cash. And basically, they sold this. They sold this kind of memory business to this company for $9 billion. Keep that in mind, because we're going to see this come back up again later down in this filing. So let us come over here further down to see what else I highlighted, because there's a couple other parts I would like to show you guys. Yes, and now we're here at the client computing. So now we're actually going to see exactly what these things actually went to, right? Now we're actually going to see like the revenue and operating income for each individual of these segments, which I really wanted to show you guys. So we are committed. So, okay, sorry, client computing. We are committed to advancing PC experience by delivering an annual cadence of leadership products and deepening our relationships with industry partners to co-engineer and deliver leading platforms innovations. Basically, this is like the chips that we get on our laptops. That's pretty much what this is. So not surprising that this makes up majority of the bulk when it comes to their revenue. In fact, let's actually come down here. We got notebook revenue was $4.4 billion, down $1.5 billion from Q3 2021. Notebook sales decreased 28%, driven by lower demands in the consumer and education market segments. That's interesting, right? Because this is not something that's in their control. The fact that they're losing revenue when it comes to their notebook services is because of, well, let's face it, you were in 2020. What were people doing, especially in the education circle, right? People were doing school at home. So they obviously needed like that kind of hardware when it came to like a laptop, when it came to like whatever, in order to like do school 24/7, or at least not 24/7, but at least like to do normal school through online, right? So it's not surprising that now that things are opening back up, that now their sales are down 28%. Notebook ASPs increased 3%. I have no idea what ASP is. If somebody in the comment section could tell me, that'd be great. Notebook ASPs increased 3% due to an increase in mix of commercial products and lower mix of consumer and educational products. That one I'm not fully understanding though, so if somebody in the comment section could tell me exactly what that means, that'd be awesome. Next, we got the desktop revenue was $3.2 billion, up $103 million from Q3 2021. So wait a minute. I read this, I'm like, wait. So their notebook section was down 28% because of the educational market. However, their desktop revenue up $103 million from the same time period. And it was because of, well, increased demand due to enthusiast and gaming products, while ASPs remained flat. So it's actually fairly surprising, because you would think that this would also crash because now people have less time to game, yet it's not. So that's interesting. But nonetheless, guys, this pretty much just covers all of that. And we also got like the other revenue was for $492 million, which was down $233 million, primarily driven by the continued ramp down from the exit of our 5G smartphone modem business and lower demand for wireless and connectivity products. So the fact that, you know, they lost $233 million, it was because of the ramp down in this business. So they're essentially just like backing away, and they're mainly focusing again in the chip and slash GPU kind of space. Now for the year to date, it's pretty much the exact same thing, you know, just different numbers, but the exact same kind of reason as to why they went down. So that was the that was a CCG part of their revenue. Now let's go into the data center, because remember there were three main ones. We got CCG data center is the next one. The DCIA delivers workload optimized platforms to empower data center and hyperscale solutions to diverse computing needs. I have no idea what this actually means when it comes to like a logistical, not when I say logistical, but like an application kind of thing. Because again, I'm not really that in depth. Again, I don't really know that much when it comes to like computing. Like, I know a little bit of it, but not to that level. So again, if you guys could tell me what this sentence actually refers to, that'd be awesome. But we do have their revenues when it came to this part as well. So we got here the Q3 2022 to the Q3 2021. Revenue was $4.2 billion. It was down $1.6 billion from the same time frame. So this one was actually a lot bigger than the other one. And the reason is because driven by a decrease in server revenue. Server volume decreased 29%, led by enterprise customers and due to customers tempering purchases to reduce existing inventories in a softening data center market. Again, this doesn't sound like it's their fault. This sounds like because things were just I wouldn't even say over leveraged. It was more like 2020 and 2021, everything was just like, oh my god, like the world is changing, it's gonna be like this forever. Companies were just buying like all of these extra inventory of things that they thought that they would need in 2022, and then 2022 came and then the world started to go back to normal, and now they have an excess inventory, so they no longer need it, right? They no longer need it. So that is essentially what's causing this. And you know, it's funny, kind of sidetracking over here, but this actually reminds me of if anybody's from like the 2000s, the Jimmy Neutron episode where Jimmy's father was just like, oh yeah, we gotta leave town because everybody in this city has a car, so since nobody's buying cars anymore, I don't have a job anymore. It kind of sounds like that, right? It's like everybody has what this company already provided, therefore because everybody already has it, they don't need it anymore, so their revenue's coming down. Again, I don't think it's their fault per se, but it is still a concern, right? It is still a concern. But that pretty much does it for that one. We get the exact same thing when it came to the year to date. And next, we got the last out of the three big ones. We got the network and edge, which is short for NEX. Lift the world's network and edge system from fixed functions hardware into open software running on programmable hardware. This, I'm not necessarily sure what this means either. I don't necessarily know what they mean by networks and edge systems from fixed function hardware to open software running on programmable hardware. Again, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a computer scientist. I have no idea what this means. So if you guys could tell me in the comment section below, that would be amazing. But we can still take a look at these revenues. So we got over here the revenue for the next segment. We got revenue was $2.3 billion, which was up $280 million from Q3 2021, driven by increase in demand for 5G products, higher Ethernet demand and ASPs, accelerated demands for edge products, partially offset by lower demand for network Xeon. So here's interesting because, well, here we got that it was because of the 5G products that this actually increased. And in fact, when it comes over here to the year to date, we pretty much get the exact same thing. However, this one was even a bigger increase, right? Obviously, it's the year to date, so you would expect a bigger increase, but instead of $2.3 billion, it was $6.8 billion. It was up almost $1 billion year to date from 2021. Now let's actually come down here to the other ones. These are the ones that were not the main ones. So we got here the accelerated computing systems and graphics, i.e. their graphics cards. I mean, you even see it right here. Our portfolio includes CPUs for high performance computing and GPUs targeted for a range of workloads. So we got the AXG delivers products and technology designed to help our customers solve the toughest computational problems. Essentially, guys, they're GPUs. At least I think that's what this mainly has to do with. Mainly their GPUs, maybe some other parts, but it's essentially their GPUs. But anyways, we got here, revenue was $185 million, up $14 million from Q3. We had an operating loss of $378 million compared to the operating loss of $222 million due to increased inventory reserves taken and investments in our product roadmap. Again, something that isn't in their control, right? Increased inventory. They were probably thinking that, you know, the world was going to be that way after 2020. It was going to continue to go that way. And then it turned out, oops, no, it's not. We have excess inventory. What are we going to do with it? We don't really need anymore. So that's essentially what happened here. So the fact of the matter is that, yeah, you know, the revenue was up, but overall they did have an operating loss of $378 million compared to the operating loss of $222 million in 2022. So in both years it actually went down, but essentially this year they went down even more. So that's really not good. Next, let's go into the Mobileye. Mobileye is a global leader in driving assistance and self-driving solutions. When I saw this, I was just like, what? Okay, so Tesla cars, basically. But nonetheless, like, Mobileye products portfolio covers the stack required for assisted and autonomous driving, including compute platforms and computer vision, machine learning based sensing, mapping, localization, driving policy, and active sensors and development. So, you know, this is I think this is more like a long play for them, right? Because, you know, the whole autonomous driving and the whole EV space is very, very new, right? And I'm not saying that it's bad. However, it does have a lot of hurdles ahead to get to the point where we get full-blown driving cars, right? We got litigation, we got legislation to go through, we got, you know, just the road, just the overall roadblock of the technology isn't there that's allowing every single car to talk to each other. Then you have to take into account possible hacks, right? So it's a whole mess. So this one is looking good for like a future prospects, but nonetheless, it did still do actually pretty good when it came to the revenue. $450 million, up $124 million from Q3 2021, primarily driven by higher demand in the IQ products. Operating income was $142 million, up $15 million from the same point 2021, primarily due to higher revenue, partially offset by increased investment in leadership products. Okay, so, you know, it was up. Right, that's actually really, really good. So next we got, I believe this is also the last one, the Intel Foundry. The Intel Foundry, which is the IFS, seeks to empower our customers by delivering industry-leading silicon and packaging services with a differentiated IP portfolio via a secure and sustainable supply of semiconductors. I believe this is their official foundry where they make their chips. Now let's actually take a look at this revenue. Revenue was $171 million, down $3 million from Q3 of 2021. We had an operating loss of $103 million compared to an operating loss of $44 million in 2021 due to increase in spending to drive strategic growth. Okay, so this one went down, right? Overall, the revenue went down $3 million. And their operating loss also went further into the red from 44 to 103. But apparently this was because of increased spending to drive strategic growth. So this is a form of capital expenditures for them, right? They're putting money into this thing. They're spending more money into this sector, into this segment, just because they want strategic growth when it comes to this. I believe this also includes, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this also includes the Ohio plant that they're also planning to do in the future. So that's interesting to note, because if that is the case, then that's actually looking really, really good. Let's actually take a look now at the overall revenue. I know we just took a look at this, but just as a recap, we got Q3 2022 and year-to-date 2022 results were impacted by an uncertain macroeconomic, just as we read a couple minutes ago. By an uncertain macroeconomic environment that continues to deteriorate with slowing consumer demands, persistent inflation, and higher interest rates, and that we believe impacts our target markets and creates high levels of uncertainty with our customers. We expect right here, and by the way, guys, this is the part that like really got me. We expect the macroeconomic uncertainty and challenging market environment to extend into 2023. So that is a little bit worrying, right? Because I mean, guys, their share price just went down a significant amount, right? And I mean, let's face it, the Fed said that they're not going to stop hiking interest rates. So the fact of the matter is that they may actually see a lot harder times, especially in 2023. Now, I did highlight one more thing, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the operating expenses, because they also went into their R&D, which I really wanted to take a look at. So operating expenses, total R&D and MG&A expenses for Q3 2022 were $6 billion. It was up 10% from just the same time period last year, and $18.4 billion from year to date, which was up 17% from year to date 2021. So basically, they're just spending a ton of money when it comes to like R&D and the MG&A kind of parts of their business. These expenses represents 39% of revenue for Q3 2022 and 29% for revenue for Q3 2021. That's massive, guys. And 37% for revenue for year to date of 2022 and 27% for revenue of year to date 2021. And they also went on to say, we continue to make significant investments to accelerate our process technology roadmap, which is good, right? They're taking a lot of their revenue, a lot of their cash flows to essentially do a bunch of R&D and to continue essentially competing in this kind of environment, right? I mean, they're competing against, again, AMD and NVIDIA apparently. These requires increased investments in R&D and an intensified effort to attract and retain talent. We expect to complete the year with the total R&D and MG&A expenses roughly flat in the second half of 2022 relative to the first half of 2022. As we continue to implement certain cost-cutting measures, including slowing the pace of hiring. And by the way, when I saw that, I was like, what? Wait a minute, what? Let me read that again, guys. As we continue to implement certain cost-cutting measures, including slowing the pace of hiring, while at the same time continue to improve our product execution in response to the continued decline in the broader macroeconomic environment. So right here, they're essentially telling us, yo, we're going to stop hiring people. Like, this is getting expensive. We can't hire any more people, man. We really can't. We only hire if like we're desperate, but at this point, like we're stopping hiring people. So remember, this was also from Q3. We're now at the end of Q4. So I think it'll be really interesting to see this kind of report or at least for Q4, because we'll see how this actually turned out. So let's actually come over here, and we got the research and development segment. So we got R&D increased by almost $500 million or 13%, driven by investments in our process technology, investments in our business to drive strategic growth, increase in corporate spending, and incentive-based cash compensations. Pretty much the exact same thing for the year to date. However, this one was an increase by 17%, which was $1.9 billion. Now for the MG&A, this by the way stands for Marketing, General, and Administrative. This increased by $70 million or 4%, driven by the following: increase in corporate spending and incentive-based cash compensations. And this was an increase 15% year to date and $695 million. Let's actually come down here further, because, well, they also go into, I believe this Actually, no, this one's actually important. So right here, we got the liquidity and capital resources. They pretty much said, we believe we have sufficient sources of funding to meet our business requirements for the next 12 months and the long term. Okay, so they believe that they have enough cash equivalents in order for the next 12 months, which is really good, I guess you could say. But I really wanted to show you guys, it is, well, the fact that they actually tell us the cash from operations, capital expenditures, and cash to stockholders in the form of dividends and buybacks. So let's actually come down here. We can see operating activities. Cash provided by operating activities is a net. Okay, this essentially is telling us what this actually is. But a decrease in cash provided by operations in year-to-date 22 was primarily driven by lower net income after adjusting for non-cash items, including the gain on the sale of McAfee and pre-tax gain from divestitures of our NAND business. Remember when I said keep those letters in mind, because we're going to see it again? This is why. So we got here, the reason why their operating income actually fell, it was because the sale of McAfee, and then pre-tax gain from the divestitures of their NAND business, and was also affected by cash unfavorable working capital changes. Now that was the cash from operations. Let's take a look at the capital expenditures now. Cash used for investing activities was lower in year-to-date 2021, so that's good, right? They spent less cash overall in CapEx. However, primarily due to increased maturities and sales of short-term investment proceeds and divestitures of our NAND business and proceeds from the sale of our remaining share of McAfee partially offset the higher capital expenditures. And that essentially pretty much just does it. And on top of that, well, we got the financial activities. And this is the cash flows. Basically taking this plus this, and we got the financial activities. Financing cash flows consists primarily paying dividends to stockholders, issuance and repayments of short-term and long-term debt, proceeds from the sales of shares of common stock through employee equity incentive plans, and repurchase of the stock. Cash used for financing activities was lower, so overall they did less financial activities in 2022 compared to 2021, and this is important, primarily due to our curtailment of common stock repurchases and higher debt issuance, offset by higher debt payments. So they're issuing shares. Not surprising to see this statement right here. They're issuing shares, which is concerning. They're still paying a dividend, and their debt just went up a little bit, which is not good, right? It's just not good at all. And I believe, guys, that this is all I have for you guys. So as you can see, I went in deep when it came into this last night. But nonetheless, what do we got to learn from here, right? What do we have to learn from here? Well, for starters, guys, they're losing money, and it's not like they're losing money for their fault. Some of it is their fault, but overall, it really just isn't their fault, in my personal opinion. Like, for example, the fact that they lost like a ton of cash just because there wasn't any more, like, or at least the demand for like the educational segment fell, right? That's not any of their fault, right? And when it came to like a surplus in like inventory, again, not necessarily their fault. However, that is something, guys, that we definitely do have to take into account when analyzing this company overall. So what I want to like to do is now use my discounted free cash flow in order to come up with a target share price for this company, because even though revenue overall is coming down, guys, it's, they're still worth something, right? And again, the whole purpose of me going through all that 10Q, doing all that research, is to see if maybe this might be a Chevron style situation, because if it is, then this is going to be a really great opportunity to buy. So we got the ticker symbol of INTC, market cap of $105.7 billion. Take a look at this, guys. As of right now, by the way, the market's still open. It's almost noon. Share price, $25.62 with a PE of 7.9. Guys, that is insane. That's absolutely insane. By the way, all stocks are crashing pretty much right about now, so they're falling with the market itself. They do pay out a dividend of $1.46. However, guys, we just saw their 10Q. I have personal opinions about this dividend, which I'm going to tell you guys later in this calculator. But yeah, I'm not fairly confident when it comes to this dividend at all. The current yield is a whopping 5.63%. Dear Lord. Payout ratio of 50.8, a CAGR of 6.26 in 8 consecutive years of dividend payment. Ex-dividend date already passed, payout date was on the 1st of December, and they pay their dividends quarterly. Now, take a look at this. The amount that they pay in dividends every single year based off of the current shares outstanding, which we just read that they stopped buying back shares, right? In fact, they're issuing shares as of rather recently. We're going to take a look at that in just 1 second. Take a look at this, guys. $6 billion. Based on their 5-year average free cash flow, this is $3.7 billion that they have left. Sounds great, except as of last year's free cash flow, this is in the negatives, right? They have negative. So, okay, their last year's free cash flow was negative. Let's just keep that into perspective. Last year's free cash flow was negative, so they're in the negative when it comes to that. So this obviously doesn't work when it comes to this. In fact, look at this ratio, this payout ratio when it comes to the last year's free cash flow, negative 45. Ignore it pretty much. Based off of their average 5-year free cash flow, this is at 62.2%, but 62, it's just above that threshold that I personally like to buy this company for a dividend. Now, let's actually jump into the fundamentals, because this is, oh boy, this is not looking good. We got 5 years ago 21.1 billion to 1 year ago of 13.3 billion. And by the looks of things, guys, this might actually fall even more. Actually, no, I am so terribly sorry. Let me take that back entirely, because what I did was, because this year's almost over, and they end their year in December, which is the month that we're in right now, and we got like, what, 3 days until this month is done, and then we start the new year. This 1 year ago value is actually the trailing 12 months for this year. So basically, this is 2022, this is 2021, just so that way you guys know, this is not 5 years ago. I'm essentially just taking this 1 year ago as 2022. So just keep that in mind. So I forgot that I did that. Yeah, it was $13.3 billion this year. That is insane, guys. That is a decrease of 37%. Looking at the free cash flow now, this is atrocious as well. As of today, as of just this year alone, negative $13.3 billion. 5 years ago was $14.25 billion. Massive decrease of 193% with an average of $9.7 billion. That's not good, guys. That's really not good. And again, we've read as to why this is actually happening. Now, let's actually come over here to the revenue. We do see a decrease in revenue of $69.54 billion this year, which is decreased by almost 2% from the 5-year average. But looking at this from the 2 year ago, $79 billion to 69, that's a decrease of $10 billion, guys. That's also pretty huge. Now, looking at the total assets minus the total liabilities, at least here, this was actually looking really good, right? Today, by the way, this current year is this current year. This one was 2021. Just keep that in mind. Almost $100 billion in this difference, which is again really solid and a consistent increase overall. And in fact, they do have a lot more assets than they do liabilities, with an average difference of $85.7 billion. Now, the cash flow minus liabilities is looking awful. Not surprising. I mean, they went negative. So the fact that their lowest point was 1 year, or essentially this year, negative $88.3 billion, that's really bad. And on top of that, it's just been consistently decreasing year over year. Not good. Average cash flow minus average total liabilities, negative $56.8 billion. Now looking at the shares outstanding. This one's interesting because we did also read that they're stopping share buybacks. And we're seeing that as of 2 years ago. So from 5 to today, they are decreasing it at almost 12%. But starting 2 years ago, they started to increase it, going from 4.1 billion shares to then, well, actually, let me be more specific, 4.062 billion shares to 4.07 billion shares to 4.1 billion shares. That is an increase of 1.4% from the previous year to the current year. And by the looks of things, this will continue to increase. And when it comes to the cash and equivalents, they currently hold $4.5 billion with an average of $4.3 billion. Now, I'm not going to give this a grade right now, and I would just like to come into the discounted free cash flow, because yeah, you guys are pretty much seeing the numbers right now, and they're low. They're very low. I'm going to assume, guys, a revenue of -7, -5, and -3. The reason is because that's essentially what analysts are telling me. Revenue growth forward 7.44%. Yikes, that is not good. So I'm going to take worst case scenario. I really am. I'm going to take worst case scenario, and I'm going to say -7, -5, and -3. Now for the predicted share buyback, I'm going to say -10, meaning that they're issuing shares at 10% in the next 4 years, -9, and -8. I was thinking about putting this at around like the 2% or so, but then I'm like, no, because my calculator is referencing 4 years into the future. So every year it'll be this number divided by 4. So it'll be 10% by the end of 4 years. So that's why I'm putting 10% over here. And with a required rate of return of 10%, we get target share price, not adjusting for debt, lowest assumption, $15.10, all the way up to almost $18. And then adjusting for debt, they do have a lot more debt than they do cash on hand, $12.63 to $15.36, with a margin of safety of 5, 10, 15%, $10.74 to $14.59. So, okay, I'm looking at this and I'm just like, okay, the current share price is $25.62. Okay, what in the world could happen here? Could this thing fall down to 15? I think so. Could this thing fall down to 12? Yeah, I personally think so as well, seeing that we're going to probably continue the same situation. Actually, we're probably going to get even further into this rabbit hole of the current situation that we have in 2022. In 2023, the whole inflation thing, interest rate hikes happened this year. Yeah, guys, it started this year. Well, it didn't start in 2021, it started this year. So, not surprising that we're probably going to see this company fall even more into the future if these were the same economic problems that caused them to fall 50%, which, by the way, I didn't even show you guys this. If we actually come over here, we can see that Intel has actually fallen like 50%, yeah, 50.61% on the year, on the 1 year, and on the year to date, essentially 52%. I do not think that since these macroeconomic situations that's currently happening, it will continue to the future. I do not think that things will get better if the same things are causing this downturn in their stock or just in their revenue as a whole. If this continues in the future, this will not weld any better for them either. So best to just keep this in mind and to just assume worst case scenario. Yeah, I honestly think that this might actually fall to around $15 or so, even though the current share price is already at $25.59. And also take a look at this, guys, as well. With the current annual dividends per share of $1.46, this is looking like an amazing annual dividends, guys. $326. However, I personally do not believe that they'll be able to sustain this dividend. I can't believe I just said that. I do not foresee it. Take a look at this. Again, negative free cash flow this year. Negative free cash flow. Sure, they're barely above it on the 5-year average, but I just don't think that this dividend is sustainable. If anything, right, if things really do get worse for them, the first thing that will go is this dividend. And by the way, take a look at this as well. Let's actually bring up their dividend history as well, because I actually found something very, very interesting. Take a look at this, guys. They announced their dividend increases in January, at least, the declared date, January 21st, January 26th, January 23rd. So the latter end of January, we're going to see whether or not they're going to increase this dividend, keep it flat, or cut it. At best case scenario, they'll increase it or keep it the same. At worst, they'll cut it. So do not be surprised if they actually do cut this dividend. And if you're solely investing into this company for this dividend, this is going to come crashing down rather soon. And also remember, if they do cut this dividend, which I'm pretty sure that they know this, if they do cut this dividend by any percent, their share price is going to come down even more. So it is what it is. Now, my personal assessment when it comes to this, oh wow, take a look at this. I'm currently down $1,000 in my portfolio just because the market is just crashing right now. Remember, I do own 35 shares. So okay, my final assessment when it comes to this, again, my personal opinion. By the way, this video is getting really long, but my personal opinion when it comes to this, guys, not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence. I will have the 10Q as well as the article I showed you guys about the GPU. Link in the description below if you guys would like to read that for yourselves. Please do your own due diligence. It's not financial advice. I'm mainly doing this for me. What I'm planning to do, guys, I already have in here like a total amount of like $1,600, almost $1,700. I'm planning to dollar cost average on my way down $1,000 more. That's about it, because I do not know where this is actually going. Now, depending on what they tell us in their 10Q4, or at least their earnings report for Q4, that I'm going to be more interested in, because now we're going to see the impacts of Q4, right? So we're going to compare pretty much everything that happened in Q3, or at least what they were expecting in Q3 to Q4, and see what we can learn from that. But if memory serves correctly, as well as the total thing that's currently happening, guys, it might get worse. It will get worse, in my personal opinion. So that's essentially what I'm doing, and that is my final decision when it comes to Intel. I'm going to personally put in $1,000 dollar cost average as this thing falls. That's it. No more than $1,000. I'll get to like $2,683 and be done with it. If I lose it, I lose it. It is what it is. If the dividend gets cut, it gets cut, whatever. But nonetheless, guys, that's my plan when it comes to Intel, because I do have hope for them. I really do have hope for them. I don't believe that the macroeconomic situation will last, right? Eventually it'll subside, but they do have some overall underlying issues, especially with that spending. So when the economic environment settles down, if that means that they'll be doing a whole lot better, I would have loved to have bought at this current moment, because then that means this would serve as a Chevron's kind of situation. So that's my final take when it comes to this, guys. That's my 2 cents. Again, please do your own due diligence when it comes to Intel or any company that you want to invest in. Just wanted to show you guys that I read the 10Q, and this is my final assessment when it comes to this. If you guys know anything else that I don't know, if you guys have any other insights that I don't know, please leave it in the comment section below. I know this was a really long video, but I figured it's a really in-depth style video, so I might as well show it in full. That pretty much does it for this video. Like if you like, comment, subscribe. It really does help with the algorithm on YouTube. You guys can follow me on my YouTube sites, link in the description below. So with that said, peace out, and I will see you all in the next video.